Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Friday News Lunch from the Bucks County Beacon. I'm Kevin Mahoney, and each week we serve up top stories affecting our communities in the nation. But this week, it's another power lunch. That's right. I'm joined by Emily Smith, owner and publisher of the Beacon. Not only will we be serving up this week's top stories affecting our communities in the nation, but we'll also take a peek behind the scenes and see what's happening at the Beacon. Hope you'll join us live every Friday at noon on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or right on the Beacon's website at thebuckscountybeacon.com. You can also join in our live chat during the show and bring some friends. Take a minute, just like right now. Just say, hey, by the way, why don't you come on over? It's a party. Come on right over. That's great. Hey, listen, I don't think I need to tell you, but I'm going to say it just in case. We're going to need independent, community-supported progressive media in the weeks, months, and years ahead. There could not be a better time to take a moment to head on over to the buckscountybeacon.com and click on that Support the Beacon button. That's right, and become a supporter. You can become a monthly entry-level supporter for as little as $1 a month. $1 a month, it's fantastic. You can be a regular supporter for $5 a month or a yearly supporter for as little as $50 a year. Look, or maybe you got some money burning a hole in your pocket. You want to make a one-time donation. That's fantastic. Help keep the Beacon's critical lens focused and sustainable. Go to buckscountybeacon.com. Hit that Support the Beacon button. Drop a one-time donation or become a supporter today. Well, let's take a look at what we've got on the menu for this week. And whoa, has it been a week. Well, this is on the positive end of things. Tomorrow's hands-off protest promised to be the largest nationwide day of action since Trump took office. Whoop, whoop. Philadelphia organizers are expecting over 6,000 people, but regional actions are taking place in Quakertown, Doylestown, Bethlehem, Allentown, Kutztown, Harrisburg, Lower Salford, Reading, Westchester, Media, and more, all over the place. This is phenomenal. The main protests, like in Washington, D.C., will kick off at noon. But man, these actions are coming right to your community. You can find an action nearest you by going to www.mobilize.us/handsoff or get up more information and find your links at handsoff2025.com. Whoop, whoop, whoop. You gotta love this. I am so excited. I'll be at the Quakertown one. I hope I'm gonna see lots of folks out there. It's gonna be a good one. Well, big question for the day is, are you feeling liberated? Yeah, well, you should. That's because Donald Trump declared Tuesday Economic Liberation Day. I was like literally waiting for the spaceship to come down and kind of blow up the White House or something like this. That's what it kind of felt like. It was just pretty crazy. Well, what is the Economic Liberation Day? Well, imposing tariffs on the world. That's right, including islands populated only by penguins and other seabirds. Oh man, I feel bad for those little fellows. And now the retaliations have begun, with China imposing a 34% tariff on all U.S. goods and restricting exports of rare earth minerals that are critical for making smartphones, LEDs, and other technologies. What could go wrong? And RFK Jr. has cut more than 10,000 jobs from the Health and Human Services. And when asked why he was cutting all these people, Kennedy said, because Americans are... You can't make this up, because Americans are getting sicker every year. What? They're getting sicker every year, so you're going to cut all that? Whatever. Yeah. Well, I don't know. It makes sense to me. And just in case you need something else to worry about, well, NASA announced that there's an increased chance of an asteroid the size of a 10-story building hitting the moon. Yep, that's right. According to NASA's Center for Near-Earth Object Studies, the chance of the YR4 asteroid hitting the moon on 22nd of December in 2032 is increased from 1.7% to 3.8% as of early 2025. Recommendation: don't look up. Well, let's take a look at what's happening in the Beacon. Look, if you want even more info on tomorrow's hands-off actions in Philadelphia, check on Kirsten Zolfo's piece in the Beacon, why you need to go to Philadelphia on April 5th for the hands-off protest. And we also got a great story on the current Democratic County Commissioner, Bob Harvey, has just announced that he's running to unseat Republican Brian Fitzpatrick on PA's 1st District. Yes, that includes Bucks County and a little sliver of Montgomery County. Bob Harvey's election win in 2020 helped flip the Bucks County Commissioners to a Democratic Party majority, and then he won again. So big deal that Bob Harvey, lifetime Bucks County person, was a teacher for 26 years and now has kind of been part of that flipping of Bucks County into Democratic majority. Well, the Yardley Borough Council is seeking to pass short-term rental ordinance that would limit the number of Airbnbs and similar short-term lodging, and that's according to reporting from Carolyn Craig of the Beacon. Really kind of interesting move. We'll be following this one. They put in the first questions so people could take a look at it. They're taking comments, but really trying to start pushing back against the Airbnb-ifying of our neighborhoods for private corporate profit. And Aaron Flynn J reports that Make the Road PA and the PA Immigration Coalition are two of the 120 organizations supporting Representatives Sylvia Garcia of Texas and Pramila Jayapal of Washington, reintroducing of the American Dream and Promise Act, the Dreamers Act, in the wake of Trump administration's attack on immigrant communities. Brian Fitzpatrick, of course, refused a request for comment. Well, where was he commenting? Well, Steve Sikkay, I think, of Newtown. CK? CK. He gives us the lowdown on Representative Brian Fitzpatrick's telephony town hall this past week. Yeah, you ever been in one of these? I have. Well, this one, CK was joined the true to form. The one that he joined was true to form, telephone call that amounted to an hour PR crisis management for the AWOL representative. John Hurdle of Inside Climate News reports on the PA's Governor's Josh Shapiro failed promises to frontline communities to protect them from the damaging effects of fracking. According to the Environmental Health Project, Shapiro still allows fracking corporations to conceal the chemicals they pump into the ground. And despite Shapiro's claims to be fighting climate change, Pennsylvania is second only to Texas in the amount of natural gas being produced each year. And finally, this one just kind of makes me a little bit sick, I gotta admit. But Pat LaMarche reports on this bizarre and disturbing rise of video games available on major consoles like the Nintendo, Twitch, and others that allow people to experience homelessness. Even though, as LaMarche writes, quote, the experiences in these games bears little resemblance to the lives I witnessed in working with the homeless population for 40 years. These games include catchy titles like Street Survival Homeless Simulator for the Switch, or Street Dude Homeless Empire, recommended for kids 4 and up by Google, Apple, and Amazon. Or how about Beat Up Homeless Outside 7-Eleven, available for free with Roblox. It's just like disturbing as all hell. But check out her article, Homelessness is Not Fun in Games, Though Nintendo Thinks It Is. Yes, that is all on the Beacon. Well, here we are once again. Emily, welcome back. It's great to be joined once again as the world continues to burn, but hope is there, I think.
Yes. I'm the positive one, right?
Yeah. Well, look, I tried to start a little positive. This looks like people are going to the streets. I mean, that's kind of my kind of happiness right there.
Yeah. I hope to make it to the Harrisburg action tomorrow. So if anyone's out in the Harrisburg area, look for me. I hope to be there. Yeah, I don't know. I've been watching the stock market.
Yeah, it dropped at least 1,300 points this morning after the tariffs. Is that what's going on?
I keep going like I'm going to win this time. I'm going to put money in when it goes down. And then it keeps going down. Like I put money in and then it keeps dropping,
Well, I look at this and I can't help but think in the back of again, I try to keep myself reined in when it comes to okay, want to give too much conspiratorial intentionality to these people. But I'm looking at this and, look, Donald Trump's kind of billionaire friends are going to make a shit ton of money, it's pardon my French, on this stock market crash.
Yeah. I mean, one would imagine that they're also losing money, but in the end, especially if they already knew ahead of time that Trump was going to, create all of these tariffs, right? And they could have gotten out of every stock there is. I mean, that's the hard part. It's literally across the board. But yeah, they're all going to make money. Someone always makes money when the economy falters and, poor people are put through the ringer. There's always rich guys making money, right?
100%. I mean, and that's what they're going to do. But today's drop at the open was remarkable. They were already talking yesterday about how this is like historic drop in the stock market, kind of one day. Haven't seen this kind of decline in the market overall since the onset of COVID. But then this morning it looked like literally going off a cliff. So
yeah,
we shall see.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to look at my app and see what the index funds
Figure out if you're going to be able to retire in the near future.
I don't have that much money in here.
Yeah. I'm not looking, by the way. I refuse to look. Right.
My grandparents made a lot of money on stocks, and they went through the crash in 87, 01, like 08, yep. Like all of the big ones. And they said, no, you just ride it out. Like I remember when the stock market crashed at the beginning of the pandemic, I was talking to my grandpa. I said, so how much money did you lose today? And he said, I don't know, 150,000. And I was like, ooh.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember back in, I want to say it was 2008, but maybe it was 2001. I remember the 87 crash. That was on my birthday. So it was a Black Monday. So it was like, happy birthday, baby. Well, it's an interesting thing. I mean, number one, on the one hand, it's, I have this, I don't know, it's a dual way of thinking about what's going on with the stock market, right? Because on the one hand, it's directly impacting, especially as everybody was forced out of pensions. Pensions virtually kind of went away. Everyone was forced into the stock market to have any semblance whatsoever of any kind of retirement promise. And for most Americans, though, that's not even a thing. Right. For most people, the idea that the stock market crashes is going to have yes, maybe knock-on effects down the road to like what they're doing, but it's not going to have the same impact it is for people who are kind of like in the middle class, upper middle class, and the wealthy. Yeah. Right. The wealthy, but as you said, are going to be righted out. So, what I look at this is not only do we see this, and what I meant to say there in addition to is that it becomes problematic, I think, when the news media focus solely on the stock market as a measure of the economy. But on the other hand, these tariffs are just like huge regressive taxes on the vast majority of people.
Yeah. I mean, there is something to be said about this stock market thing, though, because in these previous crashes, like I saw something last night or this morning, when the stock market crashed in 01, the .com bubble.
Yep.
And as my connection to that is that I was going to school for graphic design to be part of the .com boom. And and it was gone when I got out of college.
Right.
It had died. Yeah. But when that happened, there was only something like, I don't know the exact number, 17% or something of Americans that were invested in the stock market.
Exactly.
But the number I do remember from today is that they said currently today, something like 62% of the population is invested in the stock market. So if that's where people are building wealth, they just lost it. Right.
Yep.
I mean, the hope is it comes back, but they just lost it.
Right. And what happened, but you will see every time there's a crash like this, right, there's a reorganization of how wealth is distributed. So even if there's holdings, for example, even if people might have some holdings in a 401k for retirement or so that may over time recoup, let's say the positive vision of it, that it recoups over time before they get to the point of retirement. But if you're like 2-3 years out from retirement at this point, and you've just lost 50% of what's in there,
or in the middle of retirement.
Exactly. Because it's like, unlike a pension where you have the guaranteed payouts and the stuff, that's not how this stuff works.
Right.
So that's where, those folks, I think, are going to be directly impacted. But then we also see what happens with it when you have, the stock market crash of, 2008, 2009, which didn't mean that people just lost their holdings in the stock market. People lost their homes. I understand there's connections with kind of fraud in the housing market and stuff like this, but those homes didn't just go away, right? And many of them were bought up by private equity, right? Because
Mhm.
they buy on the, buy on the downslide, and then people were forced out of their homes into kind of making their way stuff. And now you've got profit centers for private equity who are now turning those once owned homes into rental homes that they're making even that much more money on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, in that crash, I lived in the Phoenix metro area, and
oh wow, yeah,
I worked for a title insurance company, which is, in the middle of the real estate industry. Um, and my entire department got decimated, and I ended up moving back to the East Coast because of that. Right? That crash was huge, but I think there's a lot. There's two problems with this that I think are important to note as someone who has a very broad and deep knowledge of the real estate industry. The thing that changed after the 08-09 bust was to get rid of the bad no doc loans, to save that, because there was all of this bad paper, all of these bad mortgages out there. They passed the Dodd-Frank Act in 2011, 2012.
right in there.
And
Yeah.
and that created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which has saved people from those really, really bad lenders. And now when people are desperate,
Yep.
we don't have them to protect us anymore because of
Yep.
Trump. Right. That's the big problem with it, is that the thing that has been keeping the real estate industry from going back off the rails like that is literally one of the things that Donald Trump has destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now not only do we have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau not there in order like people's housing and stuff, but now we also see the decimation of the Department of Education, which has what holds student loans. And there's been reporting in the past several years. This is before Trump's election and everything like this, about increasing concern about the student loan bubble. Right.
Mm-hmm.
There were the financial analysts who were saying like, look, we're seeing signs that we're in this similar kind of mode right now, that the system cannot handle this.
Yeah.
And now you've just taken away the one agency that stands between, creditors and kind of the big banks and students and former students who anyone who carries a student loan.
Yeah.
And again, what do you have? Who do you go to when somebody is trying to kind of like, garnish your wages or is threatening legal action against you, where somebody's, some of these bad actors committing fraud, right? It's garnishing wages and who knows what, and you've got no place to turn to in order to rectify that.
And technology has come a long way, and the scammers out there are much more able to take advantage of people. Like I work in technology, and I literally got on a scam call a couple months ago, and I just have to say, like, it's very difficult to know. And then when you tie that in with someone who's got a major financial issue and they're trying to fix it, and then they end up with one of these predatory companies, and we have no one to protect us.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether it's real estate, student loans, you name it. Credit cards.
Yeah, right across the board. I mean, and not only that, you're gonna have to say, just the price of everyday goods. I was reading through the things this morning, and I had to stop reading because I was just like, you know what, I can drive myself crazy right now.
Mm-hmm.
But everything from, you're talking about, they're saying that one of the first things that we're probably going to see the increase on comes with fresh vegetables and fruits. Right. Because they have this quick turnaround. They have to be sold quickly, which means they're replenished quickly, which means they're going to be the first thing that we're going to see the tariffs on. So the fact that food is going to be that first line, right, to people who are already hurting, is that tells you what the impact, the first kind of knock-on effect of this of these tariffs are going to be.
And I think worse than that, like with food, like the idea is a protectionist, come be nationalist. Let's make everything ourselves and, grow our own food and all of those things. Even if you buy your food locally, your produce locally, from actual local, farmers, those farmers are being hit with all of the same problems as everyone else.
100%.
So it doesn't even matter that it's cheaper to get the produce from them. They have more costs now on everything else,
Yeah, we just had, this was, Tom Murtha, who spoke at that town hall in Doylestown kind of a few weeks ago. It was reported on in the Beacon. He's, runs Blooming Glen Farms, which is a CSA, which is kind of outside Percy area. And spoke about that. One of the first things that we see happening out of the Trump administration is the elimination of some of these agencies within the agriculture department and some other things. That was immediately funds were cut that went directly to farmers, smaller farmers, in order to make sure that they could sustain it, right? Whether it's kind of like fixing equipment, whether it's kind of land restoration, whether it was hiring folks in order to make that. So you're seeing this immediately, of that kind of impact. Not to mention the fact that so much of our farming, right now depends on kind of immigrant labor or migrant labor, right? Folks who who are legally coming to the country, right, to work on our farms because no one else will do that. And they've got their year after year, and now they are under attack. So they're hitting at the labor level, at the ability to kind of have sustaining funds come in for the federal government, and now at the top of everything, we're seeing the tariff.
And then on top of that, the cuts to HHS and the FDA. Right. So no one's protecting whether there's toxins in our food anymore, even if we can harvest it.
Yep.
Even if we can afford it, right? Then it might be poisonous. On top of it.
It's just crazy, and I think that, I even look at some of the, some of the certifications for like organic certifications and things like this, right? That go through the FDA, that go through the USDA and things like this. To what degree is that even going to be meaningful, right? If that agency gets completely cut? I mean, you have, like communities and farmers that have worked for decades to get those certifications, to actually push for that certification, to make sure that we can start doing this. They rip that away to make that label meaningless, where anybody can claim it and there's nobody out there to kind of actually verify that this is truly organic. Not only is it going to, it's going to undercut those small farmers who have spent all that time and put all that equity into building those farms, but it's also then kind of jeopardizing our, potential health down the road, because you don't know what the hell's in your food.
Right. Yeah.
It's like something.
Yeah, none of it's good.
No, none of it's good. But this is why, here's Kevin the optimist coming in, but this is why I think tomorrow is so important in this nationwide hands-off action. And I have to say that, for those folks like me who've been getting increasingly nervous and not, know there's been protests all over the place, but how is this going to be, this is going to come together, whether in, I don't know, you think about it in social movements that you have to kind of like constitute a political subject, right? It's not, enough for just to be scattered protests, but how do we begin to have this voice? And I think this hands-off framework is very helpful for doing that, like the beginning stages of it, because it's saying, look, we're identifying all the things that you just ran through, right? We're identifying all these as part of the same problem.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just defend Social Security. It's not just defend the local farmer. It's not just defend your school funding. All of this has one cause. The king and his queen, Elon Musk. Right. So, but I think that's that's really helpful for people who are feeling disaffected, but are nonetheless, because I can't get over the number of people just around where I live who either are someone who knows somebody that they're close to that just lost their job because of the cuts in the federal government.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already down in communities in terms of its impact.
Absolutely. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. So there we are. Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah. And this is why when the economy crashed in 2008, I moved back to central Pennsylvania, because there's one thing that we have here that isn't everywhere, and it's multiple military bases. And we know no matter what kind of crazy ideas the president has, defense spending is always solid. Doesn't matter. Cut everything else first.
And then increase military spending. I mean, that's exactly
increase
what they
military
right.
spending, right? So,
it's true.
Yeah. And I'm near three
Yeah.
military bases. So yeah.
Well, I remember like spending time up in kind of like endless mountain regions, right? Kind of like up in the kind of northern kind of mountainous area. And it's like, weapons manufacturing is kind of is part of what sustains some of those small towns up there. And,
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So that's our economy now. Is that what you're telling me, Emily? You're supposed to be the optimistic one to make everyone feel good.
I know. I'm supposed to be optimistic. Move near the military bases. That's what I'm telling you. Find a military base and live nearby, because there will be things, because they have to support the military personnel because they still are getting funded. Like it's, don't live near the VA though, because there's none left.
Right. Yeah. You'll have work, just no health insurance, just no future, just no that, right? That's about it. You'll have work. Right. And there'll be a place to buy food.
Right.
Yeah. It might be poisonous food, but none of the things. As long as to you. And don't worry. Your kids who are in grade school and middle school, they can get jobs there too as well, because we're going to get rid of that child labor stuff. So,
right. Well, yeah. And they won't have school to go to. So
Right. Exactly. So it's good. So they need some place to go. So good thing they'll kind of work in the munitions plant. You're right. That's a great idea. I love it. Oh, okay. All right. I'm on board, Emily. All right. Okay. You convinced
me. Practical ideas.
Oh my God. Well, I didn't even put this in there, but did you see that story down in Florida? That's like how they're looking to kind of deal with the loss of immigrant labor. Is that DeSantis? They're going to push they're pushing for a bill that will allow for kids like 13, 14 years old to begin working like full-time overnight shifts during school, right?
In the fields.
It's like, I'm like, what? You like, are you kidding me? And this is like, they're saying this stuff with like a straight face, I mean, it's like, it's astonishing to me that this is even, that they're even able to say that without being stoned. Like literally, I mean, it's like, I can't even believe it.
Oh, that's another thing though. Like if Pennsylvania legalizes recreational marijuana, then none of us have to worry about it, because we can just get high.
Speaking of stoned, right?
Live near the military base, smoke a lot of weed.
Yeah, look at that. You just bring it all back to the happy place. Oh, crazy. Yeah, so it is quite, I mean, this is so like, I'm just going to say again, I encourage everybody to get out there tomorrow if you can. And, it could be locally, I know there's lots of different organizations that have buses running to Philadelphia and to DC and so on. But, you don't need to just go to the kind of capital. You don't need to just go to the cities. I think it's important that we see big turnouts in the major cities. That's absolutely for sure. But look, this is also the opportunity to connect with people in your community. All right. It's also the opportunity for kind of say, I keep on saying to people that I think one of the most important outcomes of like, this action we're going to do in Quakertown, or the one that, down the street in Allentown and Bethlehem and stuff, is that it's the opportunity for people to see that they're not alone. Yeah. Right. It's like the demonstration effect, right? Is that they're seeing that it's not just you sitting there, and that it's getting us out of that isolation as an opportunity to, again, not as an end point, but as a beginning point to find more points of network and connection that we kind of move forward and start, getting people plugged into community and resources. And so that begin kind of thinking about, okay, what do we do about this collectively? And that's
real grassroots organizing.
And I have to say, I've been so thrilled to be part, I've been working with a group of folks, and I'm by no means like, a lead organizer on this. Like, I've kind of like joined into this and said, I want to help. And it's just incredible to be with groups of people that are plugged into the community, want to do work, are doing work, right? And are asking things like, okay, what else can we do? What do we do next? right? And that's the kind of energy that I want more and more people to get plugged into, right? Because it's the best way to break the despair, best way to break the cynicism, right? To get plugged into your community, we can make things happen kind of right down the road. So,
yeah.
yeah. And let's not forget, like this is all leading. We've got, once again, another round of school board elections, local elections that are happening in the fall. So you want to talk about where the organizing needs to happen. It needs to happen right where it is, right in our communities, so that we make sure that, okay, we don't take our eye off the ball. Then suddenly you've got the fascists running our school board again.
Right. Yes. It's important to note that even though Trump and Musk are doing crazy things on the federal level, in some local communities, we've, taken all of the efforts to oust Moms for Liberty. But it doesn't mean that they're not still there. And now they feel empowered too, because of, the dismantling of the Department of Education. The whole school choice thing is a right-wing talking point, and the dismantling of the Department of Education is literally at the top of their list. And now that's happening. And they're like, look, we're doing great.
Yep.
Join on board.
And there is so much money behind that. Yeah. Right. Betsy DeVos, right? You got the Bradley Foundation. You've got organization after organization on the kind of right who have been funding this for decades, have been waiting for this opportunity to decimate our public schools. Yeah. So again, our communities is where we need to be kind of active and organized. So that's
and I think it's important to say, like municipal officials, borough council members, township supervisors, all of those people are going to be the ones that will, ferry us through the lack of federal funding, right? Yep. And find ways to keep our communities afloat while this happens, because there are funding gaps everywhere now.
Yep. 100%. And I think, I was thrilled, like in Percy, we've got a woman who's just stepped up to run for borough council, 26 years old, right? Coming out and has been active, has been plugged in, like not just some kind of random young person, but person who's got her head on straight, has been working hard, graduated from, the area, grew up in the area, and now is going to run for borough council. You're seeing that kind of energy starting to kind of play out in these local races, right? Because people are seeing, hey, these communities that I grew up in are under attack, and I want to go back and I want to be there with them. It's right. Great.
And beyond that, like the local municipal officials are the ones that end up, they're like the feeder for the, higher up electeds, so most people who, like John Fetterman, right, our senator of Pennsylvania. It's important to note he was a mayor of a tiny town in Pennsylvania. So I think that's a really important thing to say, is that we're feeding it, creating this base, organizing, supporting the people who are stepping up to run is important for our long-term prospects for who's going to run for the higher offices.
Yep.
Yep,
absolutely. And that's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to see the shift in interest down to the local level too as well, because, usually I think I think not like poorly intentioned or anything. I think a lot of people think, I think I want to run for office. And what immediately comes to people's mind for the longest time was like, okay, maybe state representative or maybe Congress, because that's where everyone's attention goes to. And now seeing this slow shift back to school boards, kind of borough councils, town councils, county level kind of offices, that's phenomenal. Right? Yeah. And that's the way that's the way we build back our democratic culture. That's the way we kind of build that back by investing directly in our communities.
Yeah, like someone has to be the recorder of deeds.
Yep.
It's an important job.
Yeah, good story on this. So I had, I'm going to space her name right now, and that's killing me, but she ran for the recorders of deeds. She was outdoor knocking. This is years ago. She was elected for 2 terms, and then I don't know if she stepped down, didn't run again, or don't remember, but she came to my door and kind of talked. It was just awesome conversation. And she was telling about when she won the first time round, it was remarkable because she went into the basement of the county offices where all these things were kept. And there were just boxes falling over on top of each other.
Right.
Right. It was just kind of randomly stacked.
Right.
Right. In these kind of like, that somebody kind of knew what was going on in there, but not really.
Right.
So what she did during her first term was organize the entire sets of files.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
crap like that, that's important.
Right.
You
It's important if like there's like, in a lot of those county offices, you've got like the institutional knowledge of these like people who've been around in that office for 30 or 40 years.
Yep.
And then they're gone and they don't know, no one then knows where anything is,
Right.
So it's really important to have continued interest in the things that are maybe boring, but literally the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of this. I mean, I have to say that, once again, amazing stuff in the Beacon. I mean, I couldn't even put enough into the show today without just having us talk about every single article for the past 2 weeks, because it's just been one thing after the other. I will kind of plug once again Kirsten Zolfel's piece, Why You Need to Go to Philadelphia on April 5th for the Hands Off protest. This is, if you're just now kind of like, oh, wait, hands off, wait, where is that? Read her piece. She goes through what the organizing principles are, what's going on there, why this is so important. It's a phenomenal piece, like always, Kirsten. And just please do check that out. And then, this was a huge announcement, I thought, at least, where Bob Harvey kind of said that he's going to kind of throw his hat in the race against Brian Fitzpatrick this time around. I mean, what's kind of your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there have been whispers about it for quite some time. So I wasn't surprised to find out. Yeah, my take on it is it's hard for a woman to beat him. So let's put up a white man and see how it goes. I hate to say things like that, but like that's how I feel a lot of times. It's like, unless you have someone with the kind of long-term record that Bob Harvey has,
right?
It's and someone that falls into the, he's pretty centrist, like, yes, he's like a great Democrat of ours, but like he's like a person who thinks pragmatically about how the government runs. And I think that's someone who can get both sides of the vote, I hope.
Yeah, I hope. And this is like, I'm glad you framed it in that way, because one thing I was gonna say is like, that's like no knock on Ashley Ehas at all. I mean, she was a phenomenal candidate.
Yeah.
I was like,
awesome.
Right. I mean, but I do think that, like, in addition to the kind of, here's the kind of the white guy running for office, that's kind of centrist stuff. But I think the other part about what you mentioned there is also going to be a huge asset, and that is the fact that he's been plugged into Bucks County forever.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's been one of the problems before Ashley Ehas kind of came in and decided, no, she's going to plant here, she's going to stay organizing, and then she's going to run again. Before that, it seemed like one kind of random Democratic consultant class candidate after another that was flown in from DC to run a campaign.
Right.
And again, it's like, okay, I'm going to vote for that person, but there's no way that person's going to win because he comes across and is an outsider. Right.
Right. Yeah.
This guy, I mean, you can't say that, right? And
no.
You think about the number of kids that he's taught and parents that he's been part of their family and the community he's been plugged in for so long, that he's given at the very local level, now at the county level. That's a good sign in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he will be a great choice.
Yeah.
And I like his odds,
Yeah.
But like I'm always hesitant because it seems like it's really hard to unseat Fitzpatrick because we can't get through this whole he's not a moderate thing. But I feel like by the end of this year, like by a year into this version of Trump's presidency, I feel like there's going to be a big shift. So by the time the midterms come up, I feel like it's going to be pretty obvious that like Trumpism doesn't work. Like you can't dismantle everything because we're going to be in a deep recession. God, I do not sound like the positive one today.
No, look at it. But hey, look, We got protest tomorrow. Woo!
Yeah.
I'll do
Protest.
it.
Let's make fun signs.
Right, exactly. But this is why I think at this point, right, so early in the Trump administration, that piece by Steve CK, did I get it right that time?
CK.
CK. Okay.
Yeah.
Steve CK. That kind of thing now is so important. Of course, Kirsten Zolfo has been documenting his contradictions and hypocrisies for as long as I've lived in the area. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like she's been fantastic. But additional people kind of like going to these town halls, reporting back, talking about these contradictions and showing what the hell he's doing. Like goes in and says, "Oh, I really feel your pain," and then goes off and doesn't do crap when it comes to like voting or pushing back of what's happening. Exactly the things that people are complaining about. That kind of thing is really important now. Because because we can guarantee, I mean, I'll put money on this, that when you get close to those midterm elections, Fitzpatrick is going to find, just like he always does, is going to look for those votes that there's zero stakes in, that it doesn't matter which way he votes because it's going to pass anyways. So he's going to vote against it, and he'll speak out, and he'll hang that on his little, moderate card, and claim that he's like, the most independent, whatever legislator out there.
Right.
When it's just it literally is just a PR machine, and that is it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But good, that's pretty cool. I'm glad about that. I mean, I'm really hoping, I've got a lot of hope for Bucks County going forward on a whole bunch of different levels. And again, I don't mean to just, obviously we're in Bucks County. That's kind of the idea. That's where the focus is. But that's happening in communities across the country right now. It's going to be a really interesting political time on the ground, I think.
Yeah, I think that let me put on my positive hat.
Excellent.
In times of turmoil, what we find is the ability to come together with those that agree with us in what is wrong with the turmoil. And that gives us more power to mobilize and then get people in office who actually represent us.
Yep. So let's do it, folks, right?
There's always light at the end of the tunnel.
Yep. I was also liking to hear that, this cool little story on the Yardley Borough Council about wanting to put limits on Airbnbs. Airbnb, I forget the guy's name, but the one who runs Airbnb, another one of these billionaires that's all in with Trump, right? I don't think that's why they're doing it. I think they're doing it for a much more practical level, but that was just like add a little bonus reading that right there.
Yeah.
But this has been this steady, like one of the pressures on housing costs has been the proliferation of Airbnbs and so on, and also what that ends up doing to communities, right? About turning them into these kind of like quasi hotels, while doing around, like, what do you call it? During a end around any kind of regulations that would normally go into like hotels, right?
Yeah. So I have like distinct experience from my borough council. We changed what short-term rental means in our community. So it's really not that you necessarily need its own ordinance or whatever. But we're constantly fighting lawsuits in our town to not allow Airbnbs to exist. Because you would be really surprised at who rents the Airbnbs next door to you. Like we had one where they were filming a porn in an Airbnb, like next door to families.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And like we're always in lawsuits, and there is a place for Airbnbs in communities. And I think that that's important to say. If like the way that zoning ordinances work is you have to give a place for everything in your community. You have to say where it is allowed, because everything has to be allowed, or else it can't be, or else there's something called, what's it called? No such, I don't know. It's like this thing that if there is no place to put it within any of your zoning ordinance, then someone can say, well, I want it here because you don't allow for it anywhere. So you have to allow for everything somewhere within your community. So like we allow strip clubs in the industrial section of my town, which is literally one industrial building. that's like a mill off the railroad tracks. You know, like
I guess you know where to find the strip club now if you're in Emily's neck of the woods.
Well, there's nowhere to put one because there's no open property.
Right.
Yeah, but that's kind of how it works. But
yeah.
Most communities have a downtown. All communities have to allow for motels and hotels somewhere. That would be where you would allow for short-term rentals.
Right.
Is where you put a bed and breakfast, a hotel, a motel. And no matter how many lawsuits they fight, the definitions are the same. There's a very small distinction that people who own short-term rentals are trying to make to compare it as different than a bed and breakfast, you know? So yes, it's a big deal. It ruins the character of the neighborhood. You know, like if they put them near schools, and then like it's things that people don't think about, like background checks. Like when you have a long-term rental,
right,
there are like some rules, right? Like people get background checks. You find out that they're like not a sex offender, right?
Yep.
Like, or they have to register, you know, like there's lots of things like that that are built into having long-term rentals or having, you know, owner occupied homes. But with short-term rentals, there's no checks of the people that are renting it. I mean, I'm sure you've rented an Airbnb before.
Actually, I've never done one.
Oh, really?
Never.
That's crazy. Okay, well,
I was just thinking, I'm like, wait, can I say this? I'm like, can I actually say this in honesty? I said, yep, never done
it. Well, that's crazy. I think there's a great place for them in the world. I think they're pretty cool, and they do allow people to make a lot of money on their income producing properties, and sometimes on their homes that they own, that they live in. So there's a place for them, but it does decrease long-term occupancy in communities, which affects lots of things.
Right.
Yeah. And like people who need housing and they can't get housing because they can't afford it because there's no long-term rentals, because there's only short-term rentals. That's bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, it's interesting. You see the impact. It's been a while since I've seen these stories, so I wish I could say. I keep on, like, Lancaster kind of pops in my head, and I don't know if that's the case or not. But like towns of that size, like, you know, that are kind of smaller towns that have some kind of a niche, you know, thing kind of going on, whether it's art, you know, stuff going on, whether there's like, you know, like horse track racing nearby, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Like tend to be targets, right, for a lot of these kind of like there's one, if I'm an individual who I'm running an Airbnb, but there's been these folks who are, okay, finding ways of accumulating multiple Airbnbs, buying up multiple properties in these areas as a way of kind of, you know, just like making tons of money, which drives up the regular rental prices for everyday people, and then puts real pressure upon those kind of towns. I mean, not to say that it's just those towns. If you look what's happened in cities, I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing happens with long-term rentals. You know, like we were talking about 2008, right? Lots of investors went out and bought houses cheap on foreclosure and whatever.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I know real estate agents local to me who own over 200 properties in the area. And it's a real business, you know, and they're making money, but they're also providing housing for people that can't afford to buy. So there is value in that. And the short-term rental thing is really just the same thing. But I think the main problem with it is changing the character of the community in areas that it should not be changed. So put it in a more commercial area. That's all I'm saying, you know, like, and I have to say, I'm looking at getting a short-term rental. But it's way different than you think. I want a beach house. I want a beach house in South Carolina, and I would like to be able to afford it and offset my costs by renting it out for
the rest
much
of the year.
Right.
Right. Yep.
And I was looking at regulations in like the Myrtle Beach area because I'm looking in the Myrtle Beach area. And down there, their government says there's too many long-term rentals for snowbirds. So they're literally doing the opposite of every other community. Like they're doing the opposite. They're like, no, everything has to be a short-term rental unless you've had it as a long-term rental for a long time. Like because people with short-term rentals are turning them into long-term rentals for the snowbirds.
Wow.
And for, I don't know, the community in Horry County, like to be able to rent something. And their government down there is like, no, we're losing so much money in revenue.
Stability? Money.
I know. I get it though. Their entire economy is based on tourism, you know, so it's a completely different thing. But I when I was watching that the other day, I was like, that is the craziest thing I've seen in a long time because it is the opposite of every other community in the United States.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
That is nuts.
But they also are the same state that used to only serve liquor in 1 ounce bottles. So I just can't even.
Yeah. Because I don't even want to do it. Because it's like, it just makes no sense. And it's about profiteering. And that is it. That's the only reason why you do it. That's it.
All of those things are all about profiteering.
That's it.
And that's been South Carolina's like methodology.
Yep. 100%. So you can't even say, you can put any justification you want on it, the language they use. That's all. When it comes down to it, all those things, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Get some money.
Yeah.
Well, crazy. Well, I'll encourage. There's a great article in the Beacon too as well. John Hurdle from Inside Climate News reporting on. There's actually a report that's taking into account kind of natural gas production and fracking and Shapiro's lack of action. What a lot of folks are seeing are breaking of a campaign promise to actually address the issue of toxins going into the groundwater of people in the fracking industry. He's still allowing these corporations to kind of like hide what they're actually putting in there. That is like one of the baselines that you need to be able to prove that a particular corporation, a particular company is actually the one responsible for polluting it, because you have to be able to track those elements within there. And he's building up, and this article builds off this report from the Environmental Health Project. They do phenomenal work. They're based in the Pittsburgh area, and they have been tracking this stuff and doing reports in those communities for years now. And so I would strongly recommend people check that out, because it's this is something that once we take care of business right now, this is something that we're going to have to be putting pressure upon our state government to actually respond to,
right.
Because this is something that is not the result of Donald Trump. This is not the result of what's happening in Washington, D.C. It's what's happening in our own state government. So this is, where we need kind of eyes on all the prizes, as it were, right? Coming up. But do check out some fantastic article. Really kind of walks through this. You have to hear some of the reporting on it. It's got links to the report for the white paper that comes out of the Environmental Health Project too, as well. So do check it out. I do want to just say, I'll just talk a little bit about this before we say what's going on in the Beacon. Is like, I got that piece by Pat LaMarche on the homeless video games, just like I left a pit in my stomach.
Yeah.
I mean, that blew me away, Emily. I just like, I could imagine there being these things out there, right? But to know that they're like being kind of through some of the major platforms and consoles, not just some kind of rando out there kind of making like a mod for something, but actually being available for purchase on these things. It's just like, what the hell is going on in our world? That's what I kept on thinking.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about video games being bad since the moment that they were created. They are just an extension of people's minds, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And what's the one we have it at my house, and I'm trying to think of it. The Vice City. Hold on. Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, Grand Theft Auto. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
We have it. It's a fun game to play, but are people kicking homeless people in that? Yeah, probably.
Yep.
It's terrible. And this is just like, as technology advances and it becomes easier to make all of these things, and they go, well, this is what people like in Grand Theft Auto, so now we'll just make it its own thing, like be homeless, and it's sad and sick and
It's just, I just like, it's
disappointing.
so disturbing to me. Just like, I mean, she leads the article like this too as well. It's like, and she describes the experience of a homeless family that she knew and some of the work that she did and what they had experienced. And she said, never in my, as much as she's been on the front lines working with kind of like homelessness crisis and housing issues for forever. Never in her mind did she believe that this would be turned into entertainment, to be sold and like, hey, come on and be homeless in this video game. Right. And that just kind of speaks to, and like, I don't even know what to do with that other than read her damn article, everybody. Right. Like, seriously, because it's
be aware it exists.
And to, this is an opportunity to kind of reflect back, right? I mean, this is the opportunity to kind of like reassess what kind of conversations we need to be having more broadly. Because you're right. I mean, like, we get into all the video game and do we ban the video game, do all this stuff. For me, it's coming out of that as kind of like, we need to like make sure that we're reassessing like what the hell our society is based on. Because this is freaking nuts. It was out of here.
Yeah. And there's also, just something to say about Roblox, because anyone that has kids knows about Roblox,
yes,
right?
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
It's a sketchy area.
Yep. It's like really cool. No, it's like really cool stuff going on there, really amazing stuff, but then really sketchy stuff at the same time.
It's just like the chat rooms of the 90s.
The chat rooms of the 90s.
Some of them, I know, like we're the only ones that know that.
I know, right? Exactly. It's like, Emily, just me and you now. What are we doing?
Everyone else is like, what's a chat room?
Right.
Yeah, but it was the same thing. It was really cool because you could meet people from all over the country and like talk about like cool things that you had in common. And then there was the other ones,
right?
Like,
right.
Yeah, it's, technology is, the worst and the best.
Yeah. Did you ever remember The Well by any chance?
It sounds familiar.
It was, The Well was one of the very first, God, what do they even call them back there? Not even chat rooms. They were called
forums.
Maybe, but it was like, there's another word. It wasn't listserv. It was, I can't remember, but something, but it's basically what chat rooms kind of evolved into. And these were like the folks, like before there was like, really good internet connection, everything was dial up and you had to pay for long distance calls. Right? Yeah. That's how long ago. But I remember I had a friend who was like really invested in all this technology and it's like, oh, you got to check this stuff out. The Well, it's like in California, it's like this crazy, it's like, freedom of like internet. I remember getting into it and then just kind of like just trying to find out, like getting to some of these things and like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. This is wild. This is really cool. And then being like, what the, and I literally remember this time, like I'd like shut my computer off. Like, I'm like, okay. I feel like I'm breaking laws at this point. I need to go.
I've gone where I shouldn't have gone.
Well, yeah, it's like people are talking about like openly selling drugs and things like. I'm like, what? People are talking. It was like crap like this. I was like, wait a minute, this whatever. And then I got my phone bill, and it was off the charts. I'm like, okay, never again. So I was like one and done on that one. It's been like,
oh my God. I now feel like we need to go back to 900 numbers.
Oh God. Everybody know what a 900 number is? Think about like pay-per-view, just something in those lines.
For a phone call.
Right, exactly. Oh my God.
But it could be whatever. Like you could get your fortune read on a 900 number. Like,
yep. And if you wanted to know what 900 numbers were available, you just stayed up late at night and turned on the TV.
Yeah, because there was literally no TV on.
Right.
It was that or the American flag.
Right. Yes, right. Exactly. Well, there we are.
Oh, my God.
Well, Emily, let's talk a little bit about what's happened at the Beacon, things that you kind of got on your radar, things that are kind of happening that you want to kind of relay with folks. What's up?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that's happening right now, well, there's lots of balls in the air here at the Beacon.
As always.
Yeah. So the big thing to talk about is we are building our voter guide for the primary. And I don't know if anyone knows what a daunting task that is, but every municipality is electing, 5 to 7 people, maybe 10 people in Bucks County. So it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that we're going to try to put on there. I have to say that, I'm sorry, Kevin, we are not putting inspector of elections or judges of elections on the voter guide, because
That's fine. I'm not even in the endorsed list of candidates from the kind of local Democrats, so I don't even care.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
And I'm like, you want my job? You really want my job? Right? Yeah. Go ahead.
Well,
yeah.
I would like to say about that in looking at the list of candidates, there are many, many municipalities that have no one from either party for inspector elections or judge of elections.
That's why I did a writing campaign the first time, because I was like, holy crap, there's nobody running for this.
There's nobody running in many, many municipalities across Bucks County, which is crazy to me. So we're not including those. And I don't know about tax collector and auditor. There's a lot of names we're going to try to get through. I've hired 2 people who write for us to work on the research on this, to gather all of the information. It's kind of a daunting task because when I did it in the fall, it was state and national. So there's much more information about most of the people. And it was easier to get it. We don't have that luxury this time. So it's going to be harder to actually get any information on everyone and then to verify it. So we've started, the process of research has begun, and we hope to launch that by the beginning of May. Everyone cross your fingers and send us some money, because it's going to take a lot of hours to put it together.
BucksCountyBeacon.com, support the Beacon button.
Yeah, we hope to have the most comprehensive voter guide in Bucks County in time for the primaries. And then that will help us for the general, because we'll already have all of the people who end up getting in, unless there's some write-ins. But it's a big undertaking.
It's incredible. I mean, I have to say, like I said, when you all put out that voter guide last time, it was the thing that I had been wishing for, right? It was beyond good. I mean, it was detailed. It was, and I guess the negative impact for you is that you set the bar extraordinarily high. It was so good. I mean, it really was. It was phenomenal. And the idea that we're going to have, that for local elections, and that's the project that you're working on, that's incredible. So it's unbeatable.
Yeah, we're shooting for the stars. If we get out of the atmosphere, I'll be happy.
Yeah, you're it. No, really though, seriously.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking. It's a big undertaking. So I'm really looking forward to see how quickly we get some of this information. If anyone out there knows any of the candidates and they would like to send us their information, that would make life amazing. Because like our first step is like, I don't know, get the email addresses of everyone that's running so we can just ask them questions, because that would, make it much better.
Yep.
But it's all about organizing that amount of information to then put out. It's going to be a lot. So, yeah. And then the second project that we're working on, we've been continuing on this ad sales situation, and we are about to put up a survey, hopefully the beginning of next week, to ask people what to name our business directory that we would like to start. We are going to make a progressive business directory. We have a couple names in mind, and we hope to launch it, in the coming weeks. I don't have a timeline on it because we are trying to do a lot of things at the same time. So know that that's also in the process, and I'm going to send out a survey. And also in the survey, we're going to have fill in the blank for any businesses that you think should be included, so that we can contact them and ask them if they would like to be included.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And where we can put our dollars. Can't even
Yeah.
beat it. So, well, fantastic. And one thing now I want to say, here's my little piece of advice as somebody who kind of ran in a run-on election because nobody was running. I made one mistake that could have ended up being a bigger deal than it was. So here's my piece of advice for everyone out there. If you're thinking about running, even like you're saying, oh my God, nobody, just like what I did, nobody's running. I need to do a write-in. Really, really good idea. Contact your local like Democratic like organization, whatever that might be, and ask them if they have somebody who's currently there. Right? Because what I found out in mine, and it happened to be that the person who had been there for a long time was going to be kind of moving on anyways, so that got lucky. But what was happening at my precinct was that the people that were there, nobody ran for election, and they're the same folks were just coming back year after year, and they were really good, right, at what they did. Now, personally, I take it back, right? I think we should be running elections. I think those are, people kind of, that's just how I feel about stuff. But just so that you are aware, right? Getting that background information so that you get a little bit of a lay of the land, so you're not surprised kind of afterwards. And then, in my case, these folks saw that, okay, I was there to work. I was there to kind of like do this job. I wasn't just kind of going in there to do some sort of political nonsense, but it was just really about kind of like doing the job for what it was and wanting to be committed to that. And so, you come with that kind of ethos that's going to go over big, but just know that ahead of time, right? Good to kind of check in about how it's been done before, just so you're not surprised about kind of what could happen. That's all.
Also, if you plan on doing a write-in campaign, print out little pieces of paper with your name on it so people can carry it in, because if there's misspellings, it's not going to go well.
They're kicked out. Yeah. Or it's a separate entry. It's a separate vote.
Yeah.
And like, this we also learned, right? This is I felt even that much more bad running this kind of last minute write-in campaign last time, but like literally like with 3 days before the election, I'm like, oh my God, what do you mean nobody's still running? And so the other thing about that is, you got to count them all at the end of the night. And, those are, that extends the evening, right? So this time I did it right. I got my name on the ballot, right? So I'm, go there. So, but yeah, I hope people are stepping up this year. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, Emily, anything else for the good of the order?
No.
There we go. There is nothing else good for the order.
It's all bad.
No, but the good stuff is tomorrow. Make sure you kind of, again, go check out kind of your local hands-off protest. You can just go click on handsoff2025.com, handsoff2025.com. I'm going to go right now. I'm going to kind of like post this right now in the chat. So everybody who's not hearing the sound of my voice, but is reading the comments for some reason, here you go. This is what it's going to be. You want to go check that out, get the information about it, see what's happening locally. It'll be taking you to kind of local information where you can go. I hope that everybody's headed out that can, or supporting those folks, clapping them on, sharing posts that kind of show up on social media, so that we kind of make this day kind of really important, because I do think this is an opportunity for us to really build on the organizing moving forward. So, and thanks to all those folks who have stepped up to do this organizing all over the country. It's just really impressive. It's really impressive. Well, there we have it, folks. So, I'm going to give the shtick. We're going to need this. We're going to need the beacon. We're going to need the beacon, not just today, not just tomorrow, but in the kind of years to come. The best thing you could do right now is help create a sustainable environment for the independent, community-supported progressive media for the foreseeable future. Go on and click on Support the Beacon. Go buckscountybeacon.com, click Support the Beacon, become a supporter. You become a supporter for those $5 a month, or be an entry-level supporter as little as $1 a month. Kind of come in, check in, make sure that we get that voter guide out, make sure we continue to hire kind of amazing writers, and make sure that we're kind of like really investing in our community for the long term. Go to buckscountybeacon.com, click on Support the Beacon, and become a supporter today. That's all I got. So, Emily, I hope you're going to have an awesome, awesome weekend, and ready for the fight ahead.
Yeah, let's go. Let's protest.
Go. Let's go.
We protest on
everybody.
Saturdays.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Everybody, this is Kevin Mahoney signing off for the Friday News Lunch. We will see you right back here next Friday, but we'll see you in the streets tomorrow. See ya.